Adaora stood by the window of her high-rise apartment in Victoria Island, looking out at the bustling streets of Lagos below. Life had been good recently. Her fashion business was thriving, and she had Emeka, a kind, handsome man of faith who had brought light into her life after years of darkness. Everything seemed perfect, but Adaora knew that life wasn't always this good. She had been through hell before, and sometimes the past refused to stay buried. As she looked out into the distance, a shadow crossed her face. There was something in her heart that she couldn't shake, an uneasy feeling that had been gnawing at her for weeks. Jide. The name alone sent chills down her spine. Jide had been her first love, the man who had stolen her heart during her university days. He was tall, dark, and impossibly charming, the type of man any woman would fall for. But behind that charm was a toxic, abusive man who had nearly destroyed Adaora's life. He was possessive and manipulative, constantly trying to control her. He had alienated her from her friends and tried to dominate every aspect of her life. Leaving Jide had been the hardest thing Adaora had ever done, but she had done it. She walked away, determined never to look back, and for a while it seemed like she had escaped him for good. Until now. A few weeks ago, Jide had resurfaced. He had shown up unexpectedly at an event she was attending. When their eyes met across the room, Adaora had felt her heart skip a bit, not out of love, but out of fear. "Adaora, it's been too long," Jide had said when he approached her, flashing the same dangerous smile she had once been so enchanted by. Adaora had smiled politely and excused herself as quickly as possible. She wanted nothing to do with Jide, but he wasn't giving up. Since that night, he had been texting her, showing up at places he knew she would be, making it clear that he wasn't going anywhere. One evening, Adaora sat in her living room, sipping tea and trying to relax. Emeka was working late, so she had the apartment to herself. As she scrolled through her phone, a message from Jide appeared. "We need to talk. It's important." Adaora put her phone down, her heart racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that Jide was up to something. Later that night, Adaora confided in her best friend Sade. They met at a cozy restaurant, and as soon as they sat down, Adaora poured out her worries. "Sade, Jide won't leave me alone," Adaora said, frustration evident in her voice. "He keeps texting me, and it feels like he's everywhere I go." Sade frowned, her eyes filled with concern. "Ada, that man is dangerous. You know that. You have to be careful. Men like Jide don't just go away." "I know," Adaora replied, shaking her head. "But I have Emeka now. Jide can't hurt me anymore." Sade sighed, clearly not convinced. "Still, Ada, be careful. Jide has a way of getting what he wants." Jide, meanwhile, was growing more desperate by the day. He couldn't stand the thought of Adaora being with someone else. The more he saw her with Emeka, the more his obsession grew. His love for her had always been twisted, and now it was even darker. In his desperation, Jide turned to Mama Iyabo, an infamous witch doctor known for her powerful charms. He wanted to curse Adaora, to make sure no other man could ever have her. Mama Iyabo warned him about Magun, a curse designed to kill any man who tried to sleep with a woman under his spell. But Jide didn't care. He was willing to risk anything to keep Adaora from moving on. A week later, Adaora began to feel strange. She had no idea what Jide had done, but something was off. She felt tired all the time, and her chest felt heavy as though something dark was looming over her. That night, after Emeka had gone to bed, Adaora sat by herself in the living room, thinking about the strange dreams she had been having. Shadows, fear, and a deep sense of unease filled her mind every night. She needed answers. The next morning, she told Sade about her nightmares. I don't know what's going on, but I feel like something terrible is happening, Adaora said. Sade looked concerned. Ada, I think you should see a Baba. Maybe they can help. Adaora hesitated. I don't know, Sade. I don't believe in those things. Sade shrugged. It couldn't hurt just to know what's going on. Reluctantly, Adaora agreed. The nightmares were becoming unbearable and she needed answers. The following day, Sade took Adaora to see Baba Tijani, a well-known herbalist in Lagos. Baba Tijani listened to Adaora's story, his face serious. You have been cursed, Baba said quietly. This is Magun. Baba Tijani's words hung heavy in the air. Adaora felt a chill run down her spine. Magun. She had heard about it in whispered conversations, this powerful curse that would strike down any man who attempted to sleep with a woman under its influence. It was a death sentence for any man who got too close. Magun is not just a curse, Adaora, Baba continued. It is a deadly trap. If any man attempts to be intimate with you, he will die a slow and painful death. Adaora felt the room spin. Why? Who would do this to me? Baba Tijani looked at her with sympathy. It was placed by someone who doesn't want anyone else to have you. This curse is driven by obsession. Adaora's mind raced. Jide. It had to be Jide. Who else would go to such lengths? Tears welled up in her eyes as the realization hit her. All this time, Jide had been watching, plotting, waiting for a way to make sure she could never be happy with someone else. Baba Tijani continued, there are rituals that could remove the curse, but they are dangerous and may not always work. You will have to offer sacrifices, spiritually and otherwise. Sade, who had been silent up until now, squeezed Adaora's hand. Ada, we need to get out of here. This is not the solution. Adaora was overwhelmed with fear and uncertainty. She didn't know what to do. Should she go through with the rituals? Should she tell Emeka? What if he found out and decided to leave her? They left Baba Tijani's place in silence, Adaora deep in thoughts. As soon as they got home, she broke down in tears. I don't know what to do, Sade. I'm cursed and it's all because of Jide. Sade looked at her friend, a mix of sadness and anger in her eyes. You have to tell Emeka, Ada. He loves you. He'll know what to do. Later that night, Adaora sat down with Emeka, her heart heavy. She couldn't keep this secret any longer. As she told him everything about Jide, the curse, and Baba Tijani, she watched Emeka's face grow more serious with each word. When she finished, Emeka took her hand, his grip firm. Adaora, listen to me. I don't care what curse Jide has put on you. My God is greater than any curse. We are not going back to that witch doctor. We're going to church and we're going to pray this thing out. Adaora looked at him, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. Emeka was a man of deep faith, and his unwavering belief gave her strength. The next morning, they went to Emeka's church. The pastor, a gentle but powerful man, listened to Adaora's story with a grave expression. He gathered the congregation, and together they prayed fervently for her deliverance. Adaora stood at the center, surrounded by people who laid hands on her, their voices rising in prayer. As they prayed, Adaora felt something stirring within her. The weight in her chest began to lift, and for the first time in weeks she felt as though she could breathe again. The curse was breaking. The pastor's voice rang out, filled with authority. In the name of Jesus, we command this curse to be broken. Magun, you have no power here. Adaora's eyes filled with tears as the heaviness lifted. She knew, without a doubt, that the curse had been defeated. Emeka stood beside her, his arm wrapped around her, his faith unwavering. In the weeks that followed, Adaora and Emeka grew even closer. Emeka proposed to her not long after the deliverance, and Adaora said yes, overwhelmed with joy. Their love had weathered the storm, and together they looked forward to a bright future. But there was one last thing Adaora had to deal with: Jide. Emeka encouraged her to confront Jide, to make sure he understood that his hold over her was gone. So one evening, Adaora, with Emeka by her side, went to see Jide one final time. When Jide opened the door to his apartment, he looked surprised to see them. "Adaora," he said, flashing that familiar smile, "I knew you'd come back to me." But Adaora wasn't the naive girl she had once been. She stood tall, her voice steady. "It's over, Jide. Whatever you thought you had over me, it's gone. The curse is broken. You can't control me anymore." Jide's smile faltered, his eyes narrowing. "You don't know what you're talking about." Emeka stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "You've lost Jide. You have no power over her. Leave her alone, or we'll make sure everyone knows what you did." For the first time, Jide looked unsure. He tried to play it off, but the confidence in his voice wavered. "I did this because I love you, Adaora." Adaora shook her head. "That's not love, Jide. That's obsession." With that, she turned and walked away, Emeka by her side. Their wedding day was a beautiful celebration of love, faith, and triumph over darkness. Adaora walked down the aisle in a stunning gown, her heart filled with joy. She had found a man who loved her not for her looks or for what she could offer, but for who she was deep inside. As they exchanged vows, Emeka whispered to her, "I'll always protect you, Ada." And Adaora knew deep in her heart that this time she was safe. But what about you? What would you have done in Adaora's shoes? Would you have confronted Jide, or would you have let the curse control your life? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for joining me for today's thrilling tale. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating African stories. Until next time, stay safe and keep the stories alive.